Hello, and welcome to another devlog for my stupid game. In this devlog, I've been working on rendering the walls and some other things that I want to draw. To help do that, I've moved some of the code for rendering into its own file, and the concept now is that we'll push rendering instructions. Instead of rendering a wall right when we get to it, we'll push the information about rendering that wall into a list of render commands. Then at the end of the frame, the renderer will take those commands and render the scene for us. This gives us a little bit of power in terms of sorting and post-processing of the command buffer for different things we want to do. Then I wanted to have a format for level data and walls and sectors, so I decided to use an SQLite file. SQLite is great. It makes for a great file format. It's just a single file, but you have the power of an SQL database, so you can query things in different ways and have structured data. And the libraries SQLite provides make it portable across different operating systems, whether or not they used Big Endian or Little Endian and things like that. And it has a nice C library that I wrote a wrapper for in Odin. I'll put a link for that in the description. But it makes it really simple to use, so that's what we're going to have here. I wrote a little bit of SQL to have a level, which has some sectors, and then sectors have walls. It's pretty simple, and it'll probably get expanded upon, but this is what we have right now. I took the hard-coded values I had for walls and put them into the database, and then queried that, and everything's working exactly the way it was before, which is what we wanted. But now we can edit this data in the form of our SQL. I also put together a little bit of code to do database migrations, so all of our changes to the database are in code. Now I want to implement some sprites. These are going to be the kind you see in Doom or the build engine where they're always facing perpendicular to the player. We're not going to have any sort of 3D objects or anything like that, except walls. So that's what I want to put together right now. The sprites also get drawn column by column because they can be partially behind a wall and we want to not see part of it that's behind the wall. I thought I could get away with a little bit more simple logic than I do for the walls, but it ended up being drawing a sprite is really similar to drawing the walls, so I should have just copied that code or reused it. Instead, I wasted a lot of time trying to be clever, and it didn't work for me until I stopped trying to be clever. However, it did help to find some ways to improve the wall drawing code, so it wasn't a total loss. And I made this candle. That has nothing to do with the game. Now I'm going to put in the work to have different sectors. First thing is I update the database to have info for if a wall is a portal to another sector, and what sector it's adjacent to, as well as the wall it's adjacent to in the other sector. The logic was to start with the sector the player's in, search through all the walls. If we find a portal to another sector, go through that sector and find all its walls, and if that sector we found has sectors, repeat this same process recursively. The problem is I didn't mark that a sector had been visited, so we can get into a loop of just adding the same sectors and walls over and over again until we crash because we don't have any stop case for the recursion. So I just added in a little map that says whether or not we've already visited this sector, and if we have, we don't go into it again, and infinite loop is fixed. The other sector is now showing, but it doesn't look quite right. It extends past the top and the bottom of our current sector. When I was changing the sector data, I also added a floor height and a ceiling height. And the two sectors should have the same floor height, so the walls should be lining up on the bottom, and the walls of the adjacent sector should just be taller. Since this other sector's ceiling is taller than ours, we shouldn't see the tops of the walls in the adjacent sector, only our ceiling. We're not drawing a ceiling yet, but we can at least clip the walls of the adjacent sector so that we won't see them and it looks correct. The first thing I do is just change the height of the rectangle we're drawing without changing the texture coordinates, so everything looks funky. I had spent a lot of time on this that day, and I needed to stop and eat food, and my wife was getting mad at me, so the next day I got up and decided to do everything properly. What we have to do is put the walls on the floor. But where's the floor? It took me a long time to figure out where the floor should be in terms of screen coordinates. I had written code before that did something similar in C, so I checked the source code for that, but it's awful, it's just shit code, and whoever wrote it's an idiot. Me. I kind of had to put some more thought into it, thinking that we want the character's head to be the center of the screen, and if we know how tall they are and the height of the floor, we can probably figure out where the bottom of walls should go. And I eventually figured that math out. Now that we have the walls on the floor, everything looks better, and we can clip the textures instead of just changing the height of the walls to make it look like we have a ceiling. So if I put that together, everything looks pretty good. And that's about everything in this devlog. I think this video has some fun stuff in it, so we'll end it here. Next time I want to have floors and ceilings, so tune in for my stupid, dumb, stupid, bad game, and thanks for watching.